Hello and welcome to the Warp Shelf. I'm Frank Duran.
I'm Deshaun Vasquez.
And today we are finding out if the Batman belongs on your shelf. The very stuffed shelves behind us you can see. Does the Batman fit on them? Or your shelf at home? But really, it's gonna be an easy answer from us boys. What did you think this podcast was? What did you think this was? I'm sorry. This is the Warp Shelf. What we used to be. The Real Books Don't Have Batman. You knew we were going into the Batman, prepped, ready, Batmaned out. I was literally head to toe Batman. I was wearing Batman socks, underwear, shirt, a jacket. I was Batmaned out going into the theater, and I know Deshaun probably was too.
Yeah, more or less. For some reason, I can't find any of my traditional Batman shirts. I have like a few like miscellaneous DC shirts, like the Black Lantern and stuff like that. This Darkwing Duck animated series parody shirt. For some reason, is the closest Batman shirt I can find. I don't know what happened to all my Batman shirts.
I dig that. I was thinking of showing up in the Green Lantern shirt and being like, standing in line and being like, I'm so excited to see Green Lantern in this movie. Right, guys? This is the Snyderverse. Like, no, guys, this is, to be fair, so let's break it down. Let's be serious. It's like, yeah, of course we loved it because we're Batman fans. And I think that this is inherently a great Batman movie. You know, like inherently a great Batman movie, and up there with some of the great Batman movies. That's all I'm saying. But it's also, and I think that's important to point out, it's a good movie. It's a good movie. It's not just like for the Batman fans. This has some weight to it. It has some actual. I feel like instead of a lot of money being pumped into this, some serious Matt Reeves willpower, so that way he can get like this artistic. He keeps doing. He keeps getting these artistic.
A lot of this movie is just like I could sum up a lot of this movie is just like what the fuck, Matt Reeves.
I would say that too. It's like it's one of those things that like it's amazing how much he's able to keep his voice and style, even in the face of huge franchises like Planet of the Apes or even now the Batman. You know, like the guy gets to keep his fucking go-to style the whole time, and I love it. I think it's awesome to see. But I think that's important to say is that I think a lot of people will enjoy this even if you're not a huge Batman fan. If you're showing up to here and you're not a huge Batman fan, which sorry guys, you're outnumbered. But like I'm here to say that it's a good one. But we're gonna of course talk about today the references that go into this, all the different Batman references that we saw in this film. We're going to go into our review of it. We're going to, of course, end with if it belongs on your shelf. And I think that by the end of it, I hope you can see why this matters to big fans like me and Deshaun in a big way. Now, starting off, Deshaun, how'd you come out of the theater? How'd you like come out of the theater feeling about
the first thing I did when I came out was message you.
Yeah.
And all I said was it's fucking good, dude.
It's so true.
I fucking loved it. I came out of it very positive.
Yes. I want to see it again. That's basically
I'm seeing
what
it
I'm
again
saying.
tomorrow.
I want to see it again. It's one of those things that like I almost don't want to wait the month to see it on HBO Max. I want to like see it again in theaters, especially because I saw it in a Dolby Digital theater, and the sound of this fucking movie is
I saw it in IMAX.
Yeah. You saw it in IMAX? Fuck. Yeah. So like this, I will give so much to this movie: sound design, its music, And of course it's sound effects, because it's extremely effective the entire time with all its sound effects, and
The
it's
booming score.
the booming score. How do you pronounce that
Michael
composer's?
Giacchino,
Thank you. I
which
was gonna mispronounce that, so thank you.
I want to say I was very impressed by, because as much of a veteran composer as he has been in the last 20 years, I run really hot and cold with his stuff. Like sometimes his scores are fantastic, like The Incredibles
Yep.
or the J.J. Abrams like Star Trek stuff.
Yep.
And then other times they're like really super generic, like the MCU Spider-Man films, or Rogue One's score is pretty standard,
I
especially when
liked
you have
Rogue One score. I liked
yeah, but
it.
compare it to like what other composers are doing for that franchise, like Kevin Kiner
Yeah.
and Ludwig Göransson. Like it's just another Star Wars score. It just feels like lesser John Williams.
Huh. All
Whereas
right.
like Kevin
I
Kiner
get
and like
that.
a bunch of other composers for like the spin-offs are really like elevating the
Yeah.
music and trying different things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's important to point out here, is that he did No Way Home, just his last movie, and now
Mhm.
he's doing the Batman. And I love that, he's doing Marvel and DC, and also the two biggest movies of this
Yeah,
year,
and
like
yeah, he did the score for all three MCU Spider-Man films, and the scores aren't really anything to write home about for those. But it's also sort of like, but going from that to this was a huge step up. It's
huge
kind of like
step
Hans
up.
Zimmer. It's like when Hans Zimmer did Amazing Spider-Man 2 and then did Interstellar next,
You were
and they
like,
gave
what?
him an organ and the man just went hard.
I think it's important to point out, because I think it's really effective in this movie. I think for a 3-hour movie, not only does it have to be exciting all the way through, but like the music has to fucking like capture you and carry you the entire
Yeah, I
time.
love the primary like motif throughout the entire score, which in trailers I was worried was going to sound too generic, but in the context of the film, I love how subtle it is. That sort of marching theme, that
Yeah,
doom, 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 doom. It sounds like something from a horror movie, like something is approaching.
that's what I wanted to point out here, is that I think that's one of my favorite parts of this movie, is Batman comes across and as not only psychotic, but as like a horror villain at moments, like, which I don't know if we've ever captured on a non-animated scale, like how
No, the
really
closest is like
scary he can be,
the
like
closest is like certain like really select stuff in like the first Burton film, but that's about
yeah.
it.
Yeah, and I think that this is like completely, I love this. First off, Matt Reeves literally wrote this script with the idea of Robert Pattinson and didn't even like ask him or anything. He was just like, he watched what's that movie that
Good time.
Good Time, and he
Yeah.
was just like, he's like, God damn, that guy would be a fucking great Bruce Wayne. And
Yeah, to the point where like when he was working on Tenet, Matt Reeves was actually kind of scared that he might not be available to do it.
yeah, and asked him to
But you
come and
can
audition, and Christopher
yeah, but you
Nolan fucking knew, because
yeah, he
he's
knew. Yeah, that's a
he-
great story.
great story. Just a look, like, it's so funny, like Christopher Nolan being like, "Yeah, you're sick. You're sick being Batman."
Mhm.
Like he's like, "Ugh." But I think that's what's so great about this script. Great movies. Some great movies, not every great movie, of course, but a lot of great movies are written with an actor in mind, and then they're lucky enough to get that actor to play it.
Yeah.
And I think that this really shows. This is like, it's so methodical from Reeves and Pattinson, like at the same time. Like I think it's kind of a deep portrayal on Bruce and also Batman, like,
Mhm.
which you have. I will say, like, we even in The Dark Knight, it's like, we don't get, like, like, which is still one of my favorite movies, even with the Batman existing here. It's like The Dark Knight. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that, because I
Mhm.
have hard feelings. I have lots of feelings about that, of course. But like The Dark Knight still sits in my nostalgia, also, like, love. and and it's like you don't get that from Bruce, you know, like you don't get like this real, as good as Bale did. It's like you don't get that like what Bruce is going through type of thing, and you're just
Yeah.
like, oh shit.
There's often like criticisms of even the best Batman films that they're never really about Batman at the core.
Yeah, you're just like, wait.
Or like Batman tends to be more of an enigmatic figure, and the villains are the ones that kind of like steal the show. That's like
Yeah,
been a criticism since like the Burton films.
and I
And
will say that this is heavy Batman, even if
this,
he's like,
if you just want to stack up the numbers, I'm sure this is probably the most we've actually seen Batman in a movie.
screen time wise,
Because like
I think
he's just Batman is in so much of this fucking movie.
It's like they literally were just like, Matt Reeves was like, you stay in the fucking suit, you stay.
Yeah, and I appreciate that.
I'm like, I dig that. I also will say this is the first Batman film where he doesn't go to like a gala, you know, like go to a fucking like frivolous fucking, and that's part of the story here, of course, is like they actually bring up like legitimate concerns about Batman, of course, and I like that they're like, well, Batman's out here spending his money on Batman when he could be fixing Gotham, and they're just like, herp. And you know, they've done that several times, but I think they really lean into it here, of course. And you're just like,
yeah,
you're like, cool.
no balls, no gala, no like real like Bruce Wayne like posturing.
No, yeah,
really.
Exactly. None of that like faking the debonair.
Yeah, which is already like I think the biggest criticism I've seen like levied at this so far is that you don't get that sense of duality as much. But it's clear that this take is going for like a Bruce who's just going too hard.
Yeah.
Like even his relationship as Alfred is kind of rocky.
Yeah, I like it. I like
he's
this.
He's taking it to an unhealthy degree. It's not measured. It's just emotional.
I like it because you can, of course, feel that emotion coming across on the screen, and it's also one of those things that like that's really the mentality of Batman, isn't it? To like constantly be Batman, to be able to like fix this unending problem, you know.
And as a result, we get like the most like emo Batman of all time, but it's just like I'm into it.
Yeah,
I have no
I'm
issue
so
with
into
it. Just like Batman as a general conceit, especially darker takes, is already kind of an emo kid's like wet dream. Let's just be perfectly honest. So I don't mind like right off the bat that when we fucking start with the like Frank Miller style narration in the rain, and then fucking Bruce drives away on a motorcycle while a Nirvana song plays, I'm like, you guys are going fucking hard.
I was like, Edge Lords. I will say my one fucking criticism of this movie is that I hate Nirvana. I'm sorry to anybody who does like Nirvana. I'm sure there's so many people, and you're listening to me right now, and you're like, I love the Batman. I love that they use Nirvana. And I'm like, no, I didn't. That may be one of my major criticisms of this.
You're gonna be in the minority.
I know I am, but like it's my only like really weird like music snob thing is that I don't like Nirvana. I don't like listening to them. I don't like. It's one of those things. I don't like them. I don't. It's not like Kurt is a bad person or I don't like his story. I don't like the music. I don't like the way it sounds in my fucking ears. And I don't say that about even like, I listen to K-pop. I listen to fucking Japanese fucking intros all the time. I listen to fucking so much crazy shit that's like,
you listen to Hootie and the Blowfish.
Yeah. I mean, no, I don't. But like, yeah, I mean, I like Hootie. I'm not saying I don't like Hootie, but like, but you know, I'm not saying
I was in the car while you were listening to it, and you said you had to defend it when Mary made fun of you for it. Don't you deny it?
I think it was a cover. Were we talking about a cover? I don't know if it was.
I don't think so.
I don't know about that. I think you're making shit up. I'm gonna.
No, I think your memory's getting selective. I think you're getting defensive.
But no, I'm serious. That like I'm not. It's like, yes, I'll take my snobbery away. I think sometimes Nirvana comes across as melodramatic, and they could have gone with something else. I don't know. It's like I know they wrote it while listen. Like Matt Reeves wrote it while listening to Nirvana, which you're just like, okay, so like that's the reason why he's using it. You know, like he's like,
Yeah,
this is
and
what
it
inspired
worked
it.
for me. As someone who's not like a hardcore Nirvana fan, it's just like, yeah, I like Nirvana fine. And again, like it fits the framework of what type of Batman we're going for.
Yes, it
You're just like, yeah,
does.
I can see what you mean about it getting like very melodramatic, but at the same time, it's like, have you seen this movie?
Yes, I know. And it's like, and I hate to say melodramatic because, like, obviously it wasn't melodramatic. The man killed himself. So it's like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying his music is melodramatic. I just think it sounds that way,
Mm-hmm.
like, like it just doesn't put a, like, I don't know. The guy was like, I can't halt an artist, like I'm like, hey, make your music, like I'm not gonna say like Nirvana stop making music, and of course he's dead, so that's not possible. But like, you know what I'm saying? Like I wouldn't stop an artist from making music. I just don't want to listen to it, and I'm like,
But
and all of a sudden I was forced to, and
for me, as someone who doesn't
ugh.
dislike Nirvana songs, it was just like an immediate, like, okay, I know exactly the fucking tone we're going for this sucker.
Yes.
You've had me settled in. I know exactly what type of ride we're in for, and I'm into it. Like, right, to be honest, as soon as the narration started,
Oh
just
yeah.
because you have it in the trailers, but I didn't figure it was narration. I thought it was Batman like talking to Gordon or something, or talking to Alfred.
Right.
The fact that there's actual like Frank Miller style voiceover throughout this in like certain moments is just like,
Ooh, it's so good. First off, yeah. One of the influences, hold it up, year one, Batman year one, Frank Miller, David, oh my god, I'm not gonna
Mazzucchelli.
Mazzucchelli, and Richard Lewis. They it first off, if you haven't listened to our How to Get into Comics Batman episode, listen to that. We talk
Mm-hmm.
about a lot of these books in there. But if you haven't read this book, look how thin it is. Do yourself the favor and read one of the greatest fucking Batman stories you've ever fucking that's ever come out in your goddamn life. And this movie takes a lot of references from this. There's some Long Halloween in there. And then there's yeah, he's got the Long Halloween too. And then we have some Earth One. But I don't think that's all. I don't think that's the end of it. I think that there's also a little bit of Mask of Phantasm here, like just a touch.
I think by extension, because even Mask of the Phantasm has that like late 90s, early
Yeah,
2000s like detective style for Batman
exactly.
that the comics had like shifted towards once we like grew out of our 90s phase.
And I also think there's of course, I think Matt Reeves, like the rest of us, grew up with this as the first Batman. I think there's a little bit of Tim Burton in here, of
Yeah, there's a
course.
little bit of Burton and there's like some sprinklings of Nolan as well. It's definitely a
Yeah,
Batman that's like
yeah,
pulling
yeah.
from a few things and it's
Uh,
not like afraid to wear some of its influences on its sleeve.
no, and I think there's even some nods to Dark Knight here, which is
Mhm.
like Matt Reeves being like, Master Nolan,
And
like
a tip of the hat, if you will, or a tip of
tip of
the
the hat,
cowl.
tip of the cow.
And
And
you
of
also have
course,
like more
Batman the animated series. I think
yep,
that
and you also
in
have
general.
more cinematic influences like crime stories. Like Seven is the one that comes up a lot.
I immediately went Blade Runner. Really,
Mhm.
I immediately went the other neo noir. Because I think that that's what we're looking at here. We're not looking at a film noir because, of course, like it's
A
not
noir
exactly that.
usually, yeah, a noir to be like a genuine noir usually has to be a period piece.
Yeah, or or black and white or something like that.
Yeah, whereas
Like
like a neo noir is sort of like taking those trappings with a modern context
yes, and
or a contemporary setting.
yeah, and I think you're thank you for explaining that. And I think that's exactly right. Is that like this is neo noir in the same way that like Blade Runner is a neo noir,
Hmm.
like it's like and a lot of other like even Brick is a neo noir.
Yeah.
Brink is a neo noir, like Ray Johnson. It's like you would even say that Knives Out is a neo-noir, you know, like, because
Yeah.
it's like a detective story straight up, but like in so much modern context that they use the cell phones for part of the plot, you know, like, but like, and I think that that's important here because it puts a literal distinction between Nolan's, which is very much like, what does a superhero work in a modern day, and it doesn't have that very noir feel at all. It brings it back to Burton and the animated series.
Yeah, I think this is a great compromise because it has that like grounded, like this is what it would feel like in the real world, relatively speaking. But it's stylized enough that it allows room to be a little more fantastical than the Nolan films did, which I think is a good balance.
I think that number one is, of course, you get the stylized Gotham again. Is that Nolan was just like, oh, Chicago's fucked up enough to be
There's
Gotham.
a bit of stylization in Batman Begins, just because you had that like great set for the Narrows, which looked great. But then like Dark Knight on, they're just like, it's Chicago and DC, and it just kind of looks like any old city.
Yeah, and I think that Batman the Animated Series and the comics spend a lot of time on Gotham, the setting. You know, like they spent a lot of time on that, and I think you can see the effort that Reeves put in here to make Gotham feel like Gotham. You know,
to feel like Gotham, but also feel like its own Gotham that doesn't necessarily feel like the Burton films or the Nolan films or even the Schumacher films, which are also very stylized and have like
very stylized for their Gotham. Very stylized for their Gotham.
And I had missed that. I had been wanting that since I knew we were gonna get a reboot. Like I wanted a more stylized Gotham. Even Gotham in the DCU is also sort of stylized, but also it's just like they filmed in Detroit because of course they did. But
like, hey.
For this one, like they were filming in Liverpool, but they were also taking elements to make it distinct, to not make it feel like you could point it out as any particular city, like right off the bat, instinctually, like it is for the Nolan films. And I love that. It feels like a character in the film, just the way the city progresses. I love how grimy and dirty it is. It's just miserable the entire time, and it rains a lot. It rains all the goddamn time.
People were like, somebody brought up a great point. They were like, why do people still live in Gotham? And you're like, well, first off, the rent is cheap as shit, bro.
Yeah.
And unlike Boston, people actually live in the city. You know, like it's not just rich people. It's it's like everybody lives in Gotham the same way New York is. You know, like where it's just like all people live here instead of just like only rich people and investors live in Boston. You
live in the city. We're in the greater Boston area, to put it nicely.
Greater Boston area. But it's one of those things that like, I loved that. Sorry, I got a little lost there. But one of my favorite things about the Gotham set was that like the Times Square mold they had there, where it was like sort of Times Square, and then you got down and it was a loop instead. It wasn't just like a straight line through Times Square. Like it wasn't planned, you know, like it was this weird thing that they carved out to make it happen, you know, like, and I love that about this Gotham too. It gives a lot of like character to it. You're just like, you're like, shit. But
also they infuse it with some Gothic architecture, especially for like the bigger high-rise buildings, which I appreciate because I love, and that's mostly because, you know, we're both children of the 90s who grew up with the animated series. We tend to associate Gotham with like Gothic architecture, like Art Deco aesthetic.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't represent that, just like, I mean, that's cool, and I know you want to do your own thing, but I kind of want this exaggerated looking like living, breathing city, though.
Exactly. I do want to point out that they definitely are referencing not Nightfall, but No Man's Land. They are absolute. Well, and they do reference Nightfall a little bit, but like it's like it's definitely at the end there. It's like definitely No Man's Land, and you're like oh
and
shit.
Zero Year
And Zero Year
specifically because No Man's Land wasn't a flood.
Yes. True. I was thinking that. I was like, it's no man's land, but it's not. It's a flood, so it's 0 year, and but like, I would say the vie for power is about to happen, which they also did to great effect in Harley Quinn. I want to say, no, they did like 0 year and no man's land basically in Harley Quinn, and it was fucking good, guys. So go check that the fuck out.
So if we're talking to the flood, I guess we're already sort of like into spoilers at this point, but you guys know us. This is always like a big deep dive.
Yeah, it's a big deep dive. Sorry, guys, we're gonna give spoilers, but like, hey, guys, before you fucking leave, know that it goes on your shelf, and I'm gonna fucking own a nice ass Blu-ray of this bitch the minute it fucking comes out, because this is like on our scale of like, oh, put it on the shelf, like, is like the ultimate objective. This is one of those that you're like, you might pre-order, like, which you know, like, might be higher, you know, like than that.
Again, we're saying that it's gonna come out on HBO Max in about a month, and I'm still seeing it again tomorrow. I don't care. I'm not waiting.
I get it. So, guys, we're into spoilers. Sorry about bringing up a flood before the fucking thing, but like, you didn't know what I was talking about. You didn't know shit. If you haven't seen the movie, you don't know a goddamn thing. You don't know a goddamn thing. And but basically, I really loved Matt Reeves' kind of meticulous detail that he puts into a lot of what's going on here. First off, one of my absolute favorite things about this movie is it's absolutely one of my favorite live action Bat computers. No question. This is my new favorite. This is fucking awesome. I first off, I love the contact lenses that
as a camera
can record. I love that. It's so Batman. And then and I love how like he has to use like 6 receivers to get like a signal out of the fucking tiny little lens in the eye. You're like shit. You're like, as a video guy, I'm like, damn. that looks like shit right there, man. That's complicated shit, you know. You're just like, but
so this Bat computer kind of hit home for you.
Yes, and but what I loved about it is that it kind of combined this great part of that they were bringing home about Bruce here, is that he's meticulous. He's fucking taking notes on everything. He's fucking like really diving in, like and writing everything down, you know, like,
yeah, including the narration, which is an interesting touch. Would that count as like diegetic or non-diegetic, or is that just specifically for sound?
That's specifically for sound, but
what would be the equivalent?
Well, because if he was saying it in the scene and then they cut
then
some
that
words,
would be that'd be the difference. But just the idea that like as soon as the narration like finishes and he gets back to the cave, you see him writing down what he just told us, which is nice.
You're like, that's a nice touch. I like that. It's
gonna be one fucked up journal.
Yeah, right. I was like, when somebody finds that shit, they're definitely building that up for like the 3rd movie or something. They like find Batman's journals or something. But one of my favorite parts about this is that like it prints off physical things, which is Batman the Animated Series. He did that all the time. He was always just like boo 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 boo, and so is Batman 66. He was printing shit off, like Adam West was always just printing shit out of his fucking computer and then holding it up, you know, like, and I fucking love that that Matt Reeves and Battison bring in do the same thing here, you know, like it's such a great callback to Adam West times, but also to the animated series, and I was like, oh shit, I love this computer. I'm like, I fucking love this. Like, this is so well done because it like.
How do you feel about the Batcave in general?
I like that it's small. I like that it's like this tiny little like, because it's supposed to be 2 years of being the Batman. He says that right at the beginning, and you're kind of like, yeah, he wouldn't have a ton of shit, you know, like I get that, you know, like, but. They don't have any trophies sitting around, which of course I'm always just like, you know, sometimes Batman keeps trophies, you know, like
but like none of the films have really done that, to be honest. from the comics, the like keeping of the trophies or like the display of like different suits he's had. Like at most you'll get that.
Only Batfleck had the displays, and which it's funny that fucking well, that's not true. George Clooney had a bunch of displays, you know, like there was a bunch of suits that were always,
you're right,
that were always there, and you saw other things that were behind you, but like
no penny though.
Nobody's done the giant fucking penny though. If we're speaking spoilers, I'm just gonna skip right to the fucking end here because I got so confused at the end, and I want to bring that up to like people who are already in spoiler land. I totally thought that was Two-Face at the end. Like when they were like had his half face, I was like, oh shit, they doing Two-Face? And then he said the clown line, and I was like, Joker? And then I was like, oh, it is Joker. Like, I was just, but
yeah,
like,
it's supposed to be Joker.
I don't know why, but for some reason, I was like, Two-Face? I was like,
I just
okay.
find it funny that we were bringing up Barry Keoghan for the Y the Last Man episode, right? And then now he's the Joker.
Now he's the really Joker. You're like, what a connection.
And we're talking about like, he's a good actor, but York is not the right part for him. And then he's just like, and now he's the fucking Joker.
And I think he's going to do a great job. I think I do want to say I was confused at first because of the lighting. I think some people might be about who it is. So yeah, it's the Joker at the end there. But like, I just wanted to get that out of my fucking brain because that was definitely one of those things that I was sitting there being like, Two-Face? I was like, that'd be cool. I was like, I would like that. I'm glad
Matt Reeves says that might not pay off immediately.
Yeah.
Afterward. Which I'm glad because you would have too much Nolan-verse parallels. Just like, okay, you can't have
second
more.
Movie.
You can't go in fucking 2 movies without doing the Joker again.
No, I want to see the Joker going big too, you know, like so I'm excited if they like save that for like a third movie because
we'll talk about speculation and whatnot afterwards. Let's dial it back.
Is signed in for 3 movies, so
yeah.
Matt
let's
Reeves,
dial that back. Know. That's sort of end talk.
Dial it back. But okay, so I do want to bring up everybody's and I mean that everybody's really great performances here. I think Battison is actually really fantastic in the role. It's one of those things that like I saw him as I went to the theater to see Twilight with a girl in high school, you know, like I I've been there since the beginning, you know, like I see this guy.
I was dragged into seeing Eclipse and hated every minute of it.
Yeah. And it's like one of those things that like, I never thought it was his fault. I never blamed him for for a bad written book and movie, you know, like I never really blamed him, but he kind of like walked around with the stigma for a long time. And then he was just like, well, I'm just going to do a shit ton of art movies,
art house, indie films,
and really got to show his
franchises
chops
for a little bit.
And he's definitely one of my favorite actors working now, you know, like because the man's versatile, fucking crazy, good in so many pictures, and especially one of my favorites, Lighthouse.
The Lighthouse. He's great in the Lighthouse.
Fucking love the Lighthouse, and he's fantastic in that. But also we brought up Good Times, and there's several. He's got lots and lots of great movies, and I think it's one of those things that I'm glad he's getting this big role so that way he can do whatever he wants from hopefully now on, you know, like you're just like,
yeah. And it's also one of those things where like Twilight was how many years ago? What are we still holding a grudge for it for?
Yeah, you're like, let it go, guys.
Like it's fucking 2022 and I still fucking see better than Twilight, but it's kind of Twilight-ish. I'm like, bro, get over it.
Get over it.
It's over. It's been over.
They'll reboot it. They'll reboot it in a couple years. Who knows? They'll be like,
they got to do Harry Potter first.
Oh yeah, right. They'll be like, well, no. I mean, it's easier probably to do Twilight to reboot. Probably cheaper than doing Harry Potter. But beside the point, I want to bring up right away. Zoe Kravitz is fantastic. She's she's great as Catwoman. Probably
Yeah.
the most comic accurate Catwoman.
I would say so, yeah.
Absolutely, because I think, of course, Tim Burton took liberties. He
Took
was
a lot
just,
of liberties.
Yeah, he was just like, whatever. And then Anne Hathaway's is kind of a...
It was closer.
It was closer.
But it was also like, it had to fit like the framework of like the Nolan sensibilities. So you have to alter some stuff with that.
And I feel like it was really rushed. Of course, it was thrown in the last movie, you know, like instead of here where we get to spend some time with Catwoman. I feel like you're like, cool. She's not just a background character. This is actually one of the main characters. Like, you know, like, and you're like, good. I like that. You know, like everyone was using the hashtag Cat in the Bat, and I see why now, because it's very much a Batman and Catwoman movie. You know, like as much as it's Batman and Riddler. And Batman and Penguin, it's very much Batman and Catwoman for a majority.
I'm sure this is Tom King's favorite Batman movie.
Tom King's like, yes, and then they will marry. He's like, and then they will kiss. No, I'm just kidding. Tom King's amazing. But of course,
he loves Bruce and Selena. That's his ship. He loves it.
First off, I think she's absolutely gorgeous, and I think that it's like she's able to rival Michelle Pfeiffer and Anne Hathaway, which Anne Hathaway, you know, is my girl. She's my girl. Like I was like, Anne Hathaway in a Catwoman suit. Yeah, I was ruined. It ruined me. But like she's so great in the role, and I love that they do like early Catwoman, you know, with just like the mat, like the hood,
like a burglar mask that has like the points,
right,
to like simulate like cat-like ears. The fact that it's like super low tech, because of course it'd be low tech at this point,
right? I love it. You know, not it, like, and I think that's one of the things I didn't love about the Anne Hathaway one was it was super high tech, so we were getting like a later Catwoman, even though it was supposed to be like Catwoman origin.
And it was also one of those things where like they wanted to do Catwoman, but this is the Nolan verse, so we can't like really do Catwoman, so you got to be subtle about it. Like, oh, she doesn't just fucking wear cat ears. That'd be ridiculous. She has these super high tech goggles, and when she takes them off and puts them on their head, it sort of implies they look like cat ears.
It's sort of an ear. Like, oh my god, I love Nolan. And I think he did a great job with those movies. But it's like, I love the point in DC we're in right now where we're like, hey, guess what? New trailer. Hawkman's in that bitch. Look at Hawkman being Hawkman instead of like, he's Hawkman, but he's got like cybernetic wings, you know? Like, you're just like, no, that's fucking Hawkman
we're kind of
with
past
the
that
nth
point.
metal, you know? Like, you're
the
like,
sensibilities of the Nolan trilogy made sense for the time that they were made, which seems like they were long ago, but I mean, they kind of were.
Yeah.
Like, Dark Knight Rises was 10 years ago.
Yep, and then of course you have the Snyderverse really pushing like this that there's a lot more, you know, like there's a lot more to the DC universe, you know, and I dig that, you know, like you're like, all right, cool, connected all.
And I like that the tone of this, while a lot more grounded and less like open to like DC universe stuff, compared to like the DCU this is. Because Matt Reeves is definitely like, I just want to make my Batman shit over here. Leave me alone.
Make my Batman shit.
Leave me alone. But it's so, like I said, it's so stylized to the point where we could see more comic booky like villains for sequels that we might not have been able to get last time.
Yeah,
but again, that's
I think more like
comic talk.
Yeah, exactly, right.
You keep jumping around.
But
yeah, you can continue on with the cast.
Now, of course, I think is it Paul Dano? Is that how you say his name? As the Riddler. This more Zodiac take on Riddler. Of course, I thought a lot of people. I saw a lot of people hesitant. They're like, "This is too realistic of a take. This is too realistic." You're like, "That man's wearing duct tape on his face. How realistic is this?" You know, like you're like, "This man's running around with a question mark on his chest. It's not that realistic. It's just this more Zodiac, you know, like kind of take on it, more psychotic killer take on Riddler, which I really dig.
If you're gonna cast a creep, it's good. Like Paul Dano's a good pull. It's not the first time he's played a serial killer. He's always been great at playing creepy.
Yeah, and I think he's absolutely great in the role. He's able to, like, just like Heath Ledger, be able to carry that whole interrogation scene, you know, like
Yeah.
I already saw people being like, which interrogation scene is better? You're like, shut the fuck up. You're like, they're both great. Shut up.
Just different
Like
circumstances.
you're like, and it
But-
shows how like violent the Nolan's Batman was in comparison to like how you know, even Vengeance over here isn't, you know, not able to like get his hands on him, you know, which you're like, oh, is Arkham actually doing something and protecting its fucking like
it's
inmates?
mentally unstable patients.
Yeah, you're like, Jesus, these are patients. Like,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
Yeah, the only time he loses his temper and punches the glass is the whole like, what have you done?
Yeah, what have you done?
Like the interrogation of the Dark Knight immediately starts with like, I'm gonna fucking
Boom.
ram your head into the table. Yeah.
You're just like, jeez.
But I had been itching for a new interpretation of the Riddler in the movies for a long time. It was something I wanted since the third Nolan film before we found out that it was going to be Bane.
Yeah, exactly. We both, me and you, were like, Riddler? That would be cool, Nolan. Do Riddler. And he was like, Bane. And I was like, still cool. I'm still cool. It's still cool.
Maybe next time.
Maybe next time. But I and it's also one of those things that I love the Jim Carrey Batman Riddler. I do love him, even if it's a weird
Batman
movie.
Batman Forever when I was very, very young was my favorite.
Yeah.
Because it had Robin in it.
Like,
it had Robin and it had Jim Carrey in it. Like, what was not to love?
And I had all the toys. It was one of those things that I was like, yeah, I saw that movie and I had all those toys, you know, like it was just like, oh, geez, like, look at this. But I understand that it's more of a, you know, like Schumacher was going for more of a kid's movie anyways, and he made that money. So
we're
you can't really
far
fault
removed
him
from the Schumacher films that we don't have to be so fucking begrudging about them anymore.
Yeah.
Like, they are what they are. They're just, one could argue, and, you know, defenders have, it's just like, hey, this is tackling this sort of tone for Batman.
Yeah.
This is tackling more like early campy stuff. It's fine.
It's fine. Somebody pointed out that we're like rebooting Batman suit even faster every couple years. You know, like we're like, oh, we reboot, and
like,
they're like,
we need to stop acting that like the comic book movie industry was in danger after Batman and Robin when Blade literally came out a year after.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that like, you can't really fault these guys for a different interpretation, you know, like that's the Batman they grew up, the 66 Batman, you know, Schumacher grew up with that. You can't really fault the guy for wanting to make his Batman, and I think that's what's cool about this one. It was also what
WB wanted, because Batman Returns, one, underperformed, and two, because of all the controversy, because of how controversial it was, because of how dark and really horny that fucking movie is. That WB kind of panicked, and they're just like, okay, we need to lighten this shit up. We need to sell some toys in this bitch.
We need to sell some toys, because the real money's in toys, boys. If the Gundams behind me don't fucking show that, the real money's in toys. I found out that like Gundam's like the 13th or the 11th biggest franchise in all franchises, and it's strictly toys. You know, like the shows do well, of course, but like and the movies do well, but like strictly these bad boys. And it's like, but Batman, of course, is like movies, shows, toys, you know, like clothes, like everything, you know. That's why they're number 2, you know, like you're like, damn.
Well, Batman has sort of like a global appeal.
Yeah.
Whereas like as big as Gundam is, it's not as big in the West.
Yeah. As much as I mean, I love it, of course, but it's like mechs have an anime, of course, have a hard time settling in the West. I think that's in general. I think it's you know, like that's kind of the hard part, I guess, of the culture that it like cultivated right away, you know, like and now the culture it is now. You know, like I feel like that's the huge issue.
But as far as other cast members are concerned, we can talk about
I was good. Yeah, go ahead. Andy Serkis. Is he a good Alfred? Is he good?
Yeah, he's a good Alfred.
He's a good Alfred.
He's a little more of a rough and tumble Alfred. Like this Alfred could probably kick your ass, and that's why I kind of like it.
Yeah, and it's definitely a little.
It's Earth One Alfred.
It's Earth One Alfred. He kick your ass. You fucking
and just the idea that like. The idea that, because traditionally Alfred was like a pilot
Yeah.
in the RAF, and more modern interpretations like the Earth One Alfred are just like, oh, this Alfred might have been like into some like Black Ops stuff. Like he's a little rough and tumble.
No,
Like
it
he's
makes
been through
sense.
some shit.
Why would the Waynes not hire like a fantastic protectant for their butler?
Yeah,
Like
like butler
somebody.
slash bodyguard.
So it's like, and I like that, like, like when you have a rough and tumble Alfred, you feel even worse for him failing to save the Waynes because he probably should have been there, like type of thing, like, and they even bring that up in this movie, and you're like, pretty good. I will say, they hurt Alfred, and I wasn't happy about that. You know me, don't you hurt Alfred? Don't you fucking don't you hurt him? It's kind of like, I'll say, even the Val Kilmer movies do it well, where he's like, like there's things going, and even all those movies with the same Alfred, they did such a good job being like, he's dying.
Michael Goff.
Like he's dying. I was always just like, don't you kill Alfred? Don't you do it?
Don't you fucking dare.
And that must show why it's one of those things that I was like, I definitely like this character and his interpretation of it, obviously, because I was immediately like, they hurt Alfred. Them sons of bitches hurt Alfred. I was like, kill that motherfucker. Kill him.
And the thing is, given the tone of this and the fact that it's just like Matt Reeves is putting his stamp on it so hard, to be like, this is my Batman. This is where we're going.
Right.
The scene is done so well that I was just like, I don't know if he's alive or not when that explosion came. I'm like, ooh, they might have actually killed him. So when they actually showed that he was in the hospital bed later, I'm like, okay, all right. But I actually believed for a second you were going to go there, which is saying a lot.
Because they like sort of gave him a hero send off. And then I was like, but they didn't do it. But guys, it's the #1 giveaway in any movie. If you don't see the hero shot, they're not dead.
I'm
a superhero. Or if you don't see them literally burned to death, like if you in Gundam rules, if you don't see them fucking literally explode, they're not dead. Like they're just gonna somehow survive. And I think that I think that's of course a dead giveaway here. I was like, he could be dead, but they didn't do the hero shot, and then they showed him in the bed, and I was like, my boy. He's safe. I was like,
it's just one of those things where like, that's a really close range explosion.
Yeah, you're like, ugh. I did love, of course, this like story arc that they're building for Bruce here, is that like and I think it's what's important to this movie being a great Batman movie is that like he goes from being just that single-minded vengeance, like that's what I'm doing, that's what I'm up to, that's like it's like to being like, no, I have to care about what's happening around me, because even the people I care about, Alfred, or the only person I care about, got hurt, like, and you're like,
which
shit.
Is why I don't mind that you don't have that like sense of duality between like the pontificating like Bruce Wayne versus like the dark and brooding Batman, because even both Batman Begins and this film do the thing where it's just like, no, Bruce Wayne is your mask. Which, is true.
It's true.
But
you sent me the comic the other day where they were like, holding the lasso of truth. Say your names: Diana Lance, Clark Kent, Batman. Just like, you're like, yeah, okay. Like, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. Even the lasso of truth.
But the idea that it needs to come from a better place, and I need to be better about this. It's the idea of like transitioning from from a traditional definition of a vigilante to more of a heroic figure is the entire point of this.
I
don't mind that like Bruce is sort of like, fuck people.
I'm gonna go listen to more Nirvana. Fuck you. Just leaves. Like,
I'm gonna listen to Nirvana and put on my eye makeup. Which, hey, it's cool that we have the first Batman film to address the eye makeup.
I love that. Matt Reeves gives a quote that he loved the cinematic feel of him taking off the mask and just being like covered in makeup and sweat and just like being like after like he literally like fought a war and is taking off his fucking helmet, you know, like and I love that. First off, as a My Chemical Romance fan, the eyeshadow top notch. You know, like you're like I love the sweaty fucking like Gerard Way like blackened eye look of Batman here. That's like the thing.
Weeping ink.
Like, yeah, you could go Kurt Cobain. You could have gone My Chem. Like, come on. I know I'm in the minority here, but come on.
Yeah. I think putting some My Chem in there would have taken me out of it more.
Yeah, you would more than Nirvana. Nirvana took me like I was like, no, wait, put me back in my seat. Put me back in my seat. It's like I was like, I'm out of it.
Because even when Watchmen did it, it was just like, yeah, but it helped that it was like right at the end.
Yeah. Hey, it works for me. I love My Chem. But the besides the point, we got stuck in the music fucking again. Is that like, but we're doing the cast, but I love this like that they actually give Bruce a fucking story arc that doesn't take 3 fucking movies to take, and it's not just like trained to be good Batman, you know, like it is something else. And you're like, that's the reason why I think I give up Mask of the Phantasm is he's being like, wait, can I be human? Can I be a human boy? You know, like he's like, you know, like, and you're just like, maybe. But then of course, I think you have to give it up to fucking Jim Gordon, fucking Jeffrey Wright here. He's great. I fucking love. I think J.K. Simmons is a great choice. I think, of course, my literal like one of my favorite actors of all time. Oh my God. Why?
Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman. I fucking love Gary Oldman. Anything Gary Oldman's in, I'm like, yes. Please let me watch. And I loved him as Commissioner Gordon, but is Jeffrey Wright one of the best on-screen fucking Jim Gordons?
I do really like it. I also really love the way the GCPD is portrayed in this, just a lot, even compared to the Nolan films, which I appreciate actually shine a light on the GCPD a lot more than previous films before that did.
Yeah.
But you feel a real sense of camaraderie in such little ways. Like all the bit parts, like that one recurring cop who doesn't get along with Bruce.
Yeah. The one that keeps like,
it's just like, I get a sense for who these people are with so little.
Yeah, so little. And it's one of those things that I'm like, oh, now I see why we could do a GCPD show in this universe. Like, please give me that. Like, you're just like, this is a good GCPD. But beside the point, I think Jeffrey Wright is really great in the role, and he delivers the movie's only bad line, the only like absolutely like cringeworthy line in the entire movie. Penguins, they have wings too. And I'm like, but he still delivers it with such conviction that you gotta give it to that motherfucker.
You can take a terrible line and you can turn it into art as long as you have the right performer to just fucking go for it.
I was like, Matt Reeves, that's a terrible line. Everyone understood that penguins have wings. You didn't need to say it. Like it was the only line in the whole movie that I was like, what was that, sir? I was like, yes, penguins do have wings. Thank you very much. But I
just love the continual comic book flexes that Jeffrey Wright is starting to accrue. It's just like, I'm a Watu, and I voiced Destiny in the fucking Sandman audiobooks, and now I'm Jim Gordon. Who else can I take? Give it to, and he's what's his name from Bond, which is where he, Felix Leiter.
Felix Leiter, another huge role, like, and you're like, hell yeah. I always loved him as Felix, and I think he's great as Jim Gordon here. And I will say that this is like one of my favorite, other than the animated series, of course, like all the interactions with Jim and Batman are so good, and I like him a lot. But of course, I love the Batman the animated series because Batman's a lot more ruder. He's just like, and I'm fucking gone, and I'm fucking. But I like that, like, at no point does like Pattinson just like disappear on him, except later on, you know, like he like saves it, like instead of just like, because like when they're like, you should get out of here, I thought he was just gonna like run for the fire escape and like disappear, but instead he's just like, where the fuck am I supposed to go? Like, and you're just saying, you're just like, all right. Like,
yeah, the whole bit in the station where he has to like fake punch Gordon and then fucking book it was so goddamn funny.
So good. I already saw a GIF that was like, would you punch your best friend for $1 million? And then it's that GIF of him just like fucking.
Yeah.
It's such a good punch too. It's such like a like out of nowhere fucking like like.
But if we're still on casting, so the two big ones I want to bring up, who, as good as the rest of the cast is, kind of like stole the show for me, are fucking Colin Farrell's Penguin and John Turturro's Carmine Falcone.
Which I didn't even fucking. I didn't know that was where we were going, and I was so happy to see that shit. I was like, oh shit, yes. Like I was like, yes, please, thank you for doing some.
Yeah, because while I appreciate that the mob was a thing in the Nolan films, they were always sort of like overshadowed by whatever the actual big bad was. Like they were well portrayed in Batman Begins, but you're kind of there for like the Scarecrow and Ra's al Ghul stuff. They're there in the Dark Knight, but they're completely overshadowed by the Joker.
Joker just takes them over.
And I like that you still have a film that has like Riddler and Catwoman and the Penguin, and the mob still feels like a real fucking threat.
Yeah, I like that. We're able to, I think that's what makes this so great, is it's able to like juggle all its baubles, all these fucking different things going on, and it's still able to do them justice. I don't think there's anybody that gets a true shafting in this fucking movie, you know? Like I think everybody gets the time.
How fucking good is Colin Farrell in this?
Oh my god! Oh my god! I'm
so
excited
that Penguin was on screen. I loved him so much.
So excited for the show. It's one of those things that they like already were like, we're doing a Penguin show, and I was like, when I was watching this movie, I was like, yes, I'm so ready for this show because it's so good. It's so good.
I love how the two potential spinoffs we're getting for the Batman are literally just righting the wrongs of Gotham. Because Gotham was already kind of a Penguin show. He was kind of the best aspect of it, and we're doing that, and that's going to be better. And the fact that we're also doing a GCPD show, which Gotham also was, but we're going to do it better.
We're going to do it far better. You're like, yeah. I think that the Penguin is so good here. It's like it's such a great take on him because it's so Penguin without being overly cartoony, you know, like they do even in the animated series and the Burton films, you know, very cartoony. And like the only thing they play up for laughs is the interrogation scene and then him waddling at the end, which of course is that, you know, references him being a penguin, you know, like you're like, okay, all right.
But I like the gravitas. I love like the grizzled, scarred look. I love that Colin Farrell's fucking unrecognizable in that makeup, and it's great makeup.
It's great. It's great because you get this actually looking like the Penguin look, but you get Colin Farrell's like just absolutely fantastic performance. He's another great actor we have, you know, like I think that he's just always fantastic. Oh my God, what is In Bruges is my one of my favorite movies of his, and I think that absolutely he's great here, you know, like, and you're just like, all right, I will watch a whole Penguin show. Yeah, like at first I was like, what are they gonna do for a Penguin show? And now that I see it, I'm like, I see it now. I see what you would do for a Penguin show.
Yeah.
Like,
also, God, we finally fucking did the Iceberg Lounge.
Yes. I do want to point out one of the great things about Gotham that they do here is the French Connection, like Chicago, train going above everybody. So it's like they do, and that's like, and it's right above, and it's like, it's this first off great aesthetic. I knew that Matt Reeves was just like, I want to make it look like the French Connection. Like, I know he was like, come on, man, give me French Connection. But like, it's great because it's right in front of the Iceberg Lounge, and it's like I love the like you can still see the bridge, but then you can see that it says like the Iceberg Lounge, and they call it several other names too, which I thought was pretty funny too. They like
yeah, they call it the Iceberg Lounge, but there's also the 44 Below, which is like the club
below.
under the club.
Right.
Which, clever.
You're like, I get it. And I of course love the action scene where he like tears through the Iceberg Lounge as Batman. I fucking love that action scene. But then of course the like flip of him going in as Bruce to see Carmine. You're like, damn. Like what it, I love that like that visual parallel of it too. And of course, were you as happy as me to see Tweedledum and Tweedledee? Like I was like, I was like, holy shit! I was like, Matt Reeves is the most mad lad motherfucker throwing in Tweedledum and Tweedledee. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay. I was like, this is great. Because of course it's one of those things that you like didn't have to do, but it makes it great to have him there. Like that's.
But it also doesn't have to draw attention to itself either. It's just like. If you know, you know.
If you know, you know. It's definitely one of those like Batman the Animated Series references that I was like, good stuff. Like I was like, this is nice. And of course they show up in the Long Halloween. I think right. The Tweedledum and Tweedledee do show up.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Now, I will say, of course, I think that's why it's a Bat-Cat story, is that there is a lot of Long Halloween in this story. And
yeah,
I think
to the point where it opens on Halloween, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, the Batman's officially a Halloween movie. I can watch it. I can watch it in October.
I can watch it in October, right? I was thinking the same thing. I was like, and it's sort of a horror movie, so it has
a lot of horror sensibilities, so.
Especially with him like tearing apart the gang at the beginning. I was like, damn, son.
I appreciate just how openly violent this movie is, because I know there was like some controversy about like, oh, it's not getting an R rating. I never expected it to get an R rating.
Yeah.
But to be fair, it's right in the line sometimes.
Yeah.
Like you never saw someone pick up someone's severed finger in the Nolan film. Let's put it that way.
And I did love the thumb drive. Like it's so dry. It's so dry, but it's also very Riddler, like of course make that like terrible pun, that's like very classic, even back to 66 Riddler, is to like do that terrible pun, but of course they took it to that gruesome level, which I of course you gotta be like any gruesome Riddler, you're like 0 year. you're like, oh, there is 0 year, but of course it's not. He's going more Zodiac killer here than he is that. So and yeah, Carmine Falcone. We haven't talked. We're gonna bring him up. What a show stealer! What a fucking absolute show stealer! Like he absolutely just like wasn't in the movie, shows up, and you're like, God damn, he's acting the fuck out of these scenes. Like you're just like, damn, like he's so damn good in this.
In case you forgot that John Turturro has fucking range.
Range, baby. He's absolutely fantastic. I love that connection, and then of course they're like, he's the mayor, because that is very year one, like they're like, no, he's the mayor, like he's really the guy in charge, like, and you're like, damn, I love that. Now is there anybody we missed in this that we have to bring up?
those are the big principal players, really, so we can get into like anything else.
But I will say, it's like, I think this might be the best Penguin. Is this the best Penguin too? I keep being like, is this the best? Like, and it might be the best.
I like this Penguin.
I like this Penguin. I'm excited about
it. But the thing about Penguin is that he's very versatile. Like everyone wants to do like their own thing with the Penguin in any sort of like adaptation.
Yeah.
Like Tim Burton's Penguin is very different from this Penguin, which is very different from like the Arkhamverse Penguin.
Right.
Everyone wants to sort of like reinvent the wheel. Like the Telltale Penguin was very interesting and different.
Yeah. And I think that, and I think you bring up a good point here. Do you think the action is more Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Arkham Knight than it is anything else?
A little bit, but the closest to like the Arkham games we've had, I always go back to that warehouse scene in BVS.
Yes, where he's
Where it's
just like
like that is
tearing them apart.
tearing through fucking people. You could almost see like the button prompts.
Yeah, where he's like, duck, up, you know, like
take down,
triangle, square. Yeah. Like you're just like, yeah, no, I agree with you there. That one's more Arkham than anything else.
But I did like the action in this.
Love,
but it's also one of those things where like the action isn't the primary draw for a movie like this. It's more about like the mystery and the atmosphere. Not to say that the action scenes don't work.
Yeah, I think the action scenes are great, and I think that one of the I think there's two things to point out is that I wasn't expecting to have fucking Initial D in the middle of my fucking movie. That wasn't no Tokyo Drift. That wasn't no Fast and Furious. That was fucking Initial D. They were drifting the Batmobile, bro. They were fucking tearing through the city and like just whipping through so much shit. And I was like,
it's certainly the best Batmobile scene in any of the live action films, I would say. Like,
yes. That's.
It completely like, and I like the like rooftop chase and stuff from Batman Begins, but this completely outclasses it.
You're just like, damn, but just and how fucking like posed Matt Reeves is about it too, you know, with the fire in the background, with moving through everything. It's like
just the way the fucking Batmobile is introduced.
Right? Just
like some sort of fucking beast in the shadows, like it's a tiger on a chain or something like that. Like it's alive. You're like, Jesus.
I know. I was like, this shit's about to go down. I love the way it sounded. Like it was a fucking rocket taking off too, you know? Like you're like, fuck. I love that this Batmobile, first off, is very this Batman, you know, like it very fits this type of Batman. But I love that it's a muscle car that's been pimped out as Back to the Future. Why have a time machine? Why have a Batmobile if you're not going to do it in style? You know, like as much as I love the Tumbler and all that, and I get the realistic takes of that. Come on. I want my Batmobile to be styling, baby. I want that fucking, like...
It's a very particular style. I like my Batmobile even more stylized. Like, the 89 Batmobile imprinted on me from an early age, and anything that's not sort of similar to that is always just like, well, you know, it's good, but
Batman and Robin's one is pretty great, too, with the blue all throughout of it. And the way it opens up, you're like, that's pretty fucking sick.
The Forever one is really good. If you take away the blue neon, it's a pretty great Batmobile. It looks better
great in person.
The blue.
It's great in person. I saw it with the blue, and it's great.
Yeah, the Batman and Robin one is ridiculous with like the fucking spinning thing at like the end, and it's like only a single seater. It's ridiculous. It's fun though. I had that Batmobile toy as a kid. So
exactly,
it did its job.
It's its job. But I will say that this is just really cool. Like, you know, like I think that's what they're going for. This like rockabilly, like Batman type of thing going on here. And I dig that. And I think that this chase scene, I brought up French Connection earlier. This even rivals that, where it's like the French Connection feels like you're always going to get him and you're almost going to get him. Like that happens several times here, but then Batman like pushes through when he doesn't get him. And I love that about this. He's just like, nope, here I go. Nope, here I go. You know, like he's just like, and especially at the end where he just like comes through the fucking flames in slow-mo, which I will say got my bat dick super hard. I will just say, I was like, ugh.
Because they really advertised that bit in the trailers.
Yeah.
But the trailers really gave nothing away as to like how cool that actual entire chase sequence is, which is good.
It really did. I will say it's cool to get in one movie a great bat bike and a great Batmobile, you know, like and like sure, of course I miss a bat plane, you know, but that's not what this Batman is yet, you know, like he may get there, but you know, he doesn't have a bat plane yet. Like you're like, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting like what decisions they make to like Batman's arsenal as to like he's there, he's not quite there. He's there, he's not quite there. The bat suit is super fucking armored. It's just eating bullets.
Right, eating bullets. Like
But
first off,
also,
I love that hallway scene. It goes up there with the other great hallway scenes of him, well, with just the light of the guns going off and him taking the bullets.
yeah.
Oh, so good.
But it also doesn't have like an intuitive glider. I like that it just turns into like a wingsuit.
Yeah, right. And then he's just like, "Woo." Like a
But
little squirrel
he's
suit.
also not practiced, so he like fucking he fucking fumbles it.
Yeah, and he like lands badly. I kind of love that. That was very Earth One, him not being able to land right. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes
Just
sense.
like, okay, early days, you'll get it.
You'll get it. It'll work out. But I also love that because it's really physical. Like he really fucking like hits a couple things there, you know, and you're just like, Jesus fuck. And he just shakes it off and is just like, all right, fucking head back to that cave. He's just
I get why they did it, but I could have done without the like GoPro style shot when he's flying through. I get why they did it.
I get why they did it.
It was a little silly.
It was a little silly. It's one of those things that I'm like, is this just for the Batman ride? Is this just for the the Universal Studios like Batman ride? Like, what is this? You know, like you're just like, what? Like, because it was definitely like a roller coaster moment, and it was, and he didn't look so good. That was my problem.
And he's trying to like emphasize and is trying to like emulate that sort of footage you see when you see like wingsuit videos and stuff like that. But it like pulled me out for a sec because it just looked silly.
Yeah, it was just like, and we're out. But I will say it was a cool little touch to do the swirl suit though. I was just like, sick. That's cool. Like,
it is a solid bat suit though, just from
it's a solid bat suit,
sheer aesthetic.
And I did love the bat bike with the little wings like coming up, so it kind of looks like a toy. It looks like the toys. It looks like the toys, you know. Like, and I was kind of still like, good stuff, you know.
I like the collar. It's funny how we've sort of like moved that way towards Batman a lot with the collars.
Yeah, more
like he has a collar in this. Like the New 52 armor had sort of a collar going on.
Yeah.
The like Earth 2 comics like definitely emphasize the collar. White Knight, he has like a Dracula style collar.
Seriously.
We love the collars.
I did love the ears. I love that he's actually able to, of course, take off the bat symbol and it be a batarang. Like, I thought that was actually such a
batarang / like X-Acto knife.
Yeah, and I love that he just like puts it back. It's so cinematic for him to like walk towards the camera and put it back on his chest. You're like, oh yeah, fuck yeah.
I like that the cowl looks like it's stitched together.
Yes,
you see like the seams for it and everything. I sort of dig the look.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's one of those things that it's not like the other bat helmets where it's like it could hold electric circuitry to like shock people to stay away from the mask. It was like something you could just take off, you know, like, and I was like, oh, okay, all right. Because there's that moment where they like could have unmasked him and they like don't, you know, like, and with the cops and stuff like that. And you're just like, okay, all right.
And we've also like found the perfect compromise because the Dark Knight was the first one where we could turn the head because we basically designed it to be more like a motorcycle helmet.
Yeah.
And we got away with it that way. Then with Batfleck, we were actually able to do like a full like rubber neck ass cowl, but he still had full range of motion. So now the sky's the limit.
Sky's the limit. He can turn his head. He can turn his body with individual parts instead of the Michael Keaton fucking turning.
The dramatic turn, which he sells that dramatic
turn. He sells it, you know, like, so you can't really fault it, but it's pretty funny. It's very Dracula. The very like full turn body, you know, like as he moves around. I think that the suit's great. The Batmobile's great. The Bat Bike's great. This Gotham looks really nice the whole time. You're just like the production design on this movie. Chef's kiss.
I love the way the suite in Wayne Tower looks, like the one that like he and Alfred live in.
Yeah,
like it's so gothic and beautiful, but it's also so isolated and feels lonely to be there.
Right, and like kind of like, even though it's a big place, kind of like boxing them in, you know, a little bit, you know, like they're contained in that when they're in there. I dug that. I was like, she. Lots of visual. I think that's the other thing is Matt Reeves is doing a lot of visual storytelling here with lights and colors here. He's doing a lot of Batman is red and red is hope and white is kind of like it's almost love, I want to say. And like, you know, Catwoman uses the white light a lot and everything like that. And then there's a lot of blue and blacks, and those are of course like Gotham like taking shit back and stuff like that. And I love that like literal storytelling within the frame, you know, like you're just like, because it's one of those things that you get from like Paul Thomas Anderson, you know, like where you're like, oh yeah, he's moving towards that color. You get it? You get what he's trying to say with the color that he's walking towards, and I'm amazed to sit there during a Batman movie going, are you getting it? He's walking towards the red light, or he's carrying the red torch, and he's now, you know, like a symbol of the city, you know, like you're just like,
oh yeah, the literal fucking Exodus scene with the flare as he's like walking the Gothamites out. You're just like, beautiful.
I want to bring up, and I know we're of course skipping around a bunch, but like one of my favorite things about this is that the flood starts and Batman doesn't have like some magical fix for this. Even in Batman Begins, there's like a major problem and Batman saves it. You know, like he's able to stop the issue. You know, like I like that this is sort of realistic and like Batman can't save everybody, you know, like he's just where he is, he can help, you know, like, and that's what he's doing.
This is like one of those movies where I'm almost glad that we didn't see it together in the theater, because I feel like we would have been punching each other's arms the entire time. Like as soon as like the walls come down and the flood started happening, I was just like, oh my god, fucking do it, the flood for 0 year. This bad boy, which I almost forgot that this is the exact issue where they do the flooding in 0 year, and this is the 1 0 year issue I got signed.
Ooh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And it's also a great cover. Holy fuck balls. If you haven't read 0 year, it's like, yeah, I'm telling you to read the year books. Read Batman Year 1 and Batman 0 year. They're great. You're going to love them if you haven't read them yet. Now, and even if you're not a huge Batman fan, those books are fucking great. I love, as I was saying, I love that Batman wasn't able to like save the city, you know, like in a single swoop, you know, like there wasn't some like easy fix. This was a current problem and it's going to fuck it up, you know, like even, you know, at the end of Dark Knight Rises, they kind of like are just like, and we took out Bane and everything's fine, you know, and you're like, you guys were cut off and you were DMZ for a while there, you guys.
For a while, and also like a nuclear bomb went off, not like a few miles outside of the city, and that's going to be a problem when the winds start to pick up that radiation and bring it to Gotham. But it's just one of those things. So I don't think about that too hard.
Don't think about it.
That's like the advantage and disadvantage of the Dark Knight Rises is that it wants to be a little more comic booky. And it's like not afraid to be a little more exaggerated than the first two films are, but at the same time, it almost contradicts itself with the first two because it's not trying to be as realistic.
Yep, it like starts to do a little bit more cartoonish things, and then it kind of like you start to be like, well, would that work? You know, like, and that's the problem is Nolan already asked the question, would that work? You know, like, and that's not what the Batman's asking here. They're like, is it badass? And you're like, yeah, it is.
But was it cool though?
But was it cool though? And that's exactly it. You're like, oh fuck yeah, it was. Yeah, exactly. The Suicide Squad line. But was it cool though? Fuck yeah, it was. And I will say the Riddler stuff is, and I don't know if we've gone into that, and I think that's the other thing we're just really missing here is our Riddler analysis. I love this because he's doing simple enough riddles that like they're able to get it, but it's so interconnected that it like actually took some planning. You know, you can like see the planning because it's not just solving the riddle, it's what the riddle means, you know, like, which is also very Batman with Adam West, you know, is that like he would always be like, I solved the riddle, but how's that connect to the crime? Like he's like, and that's kind of what's going on here, is that they like solve the riddle almost immediately. Batman's almost immediately like, got it, like, which I love the bomb scene. The bomb scene's so fucking good in the church. That scene's fantastic. But I love this like psychotic, unhinged Riddler. I think a lot of people will point to it being very Jokerish, with him leaving like messages places and everything, and being on the internet and stuff like that. But I think that this is, that's how these people are charismatic. Like,
there's always been sort of like certain parallels between Riddler and Joker anyway, to the point where like even like in an episode of the animated series, they kind of make fun of it.
Yeah.
Like Joker's going through like his plans and schemes, just like, nope, old hat, can't do it. To Riddler.
To Riddler, yeah. I did love that line. To Riddler. It's one of those things that I think that they do such a good job of like balancing this psychotic killer and the kind of psychotic fun of the Riddler, like of putting down these trophies and everything. It's of course not as based as Arkham Knight and Arkham City, where they're just like, find trophies and don't worry about the riddles as long as you find the trophies. You're like, well, that's stupid. You're like, that's
but
dumb. That's not
in the context of a video game.
Yeah, you're like, it makes sense, but it's like, it's one of those things that I think they are able to capture something great here, not just something silly like in the Arkham games, or something silly like the Jim Carrey, of course. This is, or even silly with the Adam West show, is that like it's silly in the way, in a fucked up way most of the time. Whenever it's making like a silly joke, it's usually fucked, and you're just like, I also love that there was sort of some hush in here, a tiny bit.
Including like that direct
Elliot.
Fucking Easter egg, like when they're watching the footage and you see not Thomas Elliot, but Edward Elliot as like one of the reporters. And then they literally put the word hush on screen, and I'm like,
yeah, maybe be like, wait, where are we going with this? I was like, wait a fucking minute. Is Hush about to show up? I was like, what the fuck? But I
thought they might have been going there. I'm like, I swear to God, if you're about to reveal that like Riddler is also Thomas Elliot because we want to make that parallel.
Yeah, right. You're like, damn. I do kind of like this, like, and maybe they're setting it up that like Bruce just keeps fighting worse off orphans than him, like that they're all just like pissed at him being this like most famous orphan. I kind of love, first off, that was one of my like, I love that scene where they're like that, where he's like, you are not what a real orphan is. A real orphan is sleeping in a room with 30 kids. The real orphan is waking up with rats chewing on your fingers, like some actual, like, like some real world consequence,
Yeah, and the idea of like an orphanage that was supposed to be funded by the Waynes, but then pretty much fell apart after they were killed, is also a thing from Scott Snyder's run.
Right? You're just like, damn. And I like that, like, that Nigma here is a failed product of the Waynes a little bit, I kind of like that there's like this third line that like, not only are these villains Batman's responsibility, like they usually are because they're villains, but they're like his responsibility because the Waynes fucked up, and he, he hasn't taken it back, and it's like the Waynes like fucked over all these kids, and it's like, and this whole city, and it's like he kind of feels this responsibility to fix things, and you're just like, I dig that. I dig that, and I also dug that they were able to do the like try to kill Bruce Wayne plot line without having to do anything weird, a double or somebody else dressed up as Wayne. They were just like, nope, he wasn't there. Like it was his butler who opened it. You're like, okay, good. We didn't have to do something weird.
We didn't need something overly elaborate.
Yeah, it was just like, nope, tried to kill Bruce Wayne. We fucked up. And you're like, haha, good. We were able to do this plot line of being like, oh, how's he going to take down Bruce Wayne without being like, let's do something real dumb. You know, again, you're just like, hey, good. Okay. Like, I'm okay with this. I will say that when we're talking horror elements, Riddler's the main fucking element, of course. We actually like watch him murder a guy slowly like it's a fucking horror movie. Like it's fucking the beginning of Halloween.
Just his introduction with him like creeping in the house.
Just standing there, and then the scream he does before he hits him. I was like, oh shit. Like,
yeah, that scream hits a little home for me because I've done screams like that before to creep people out. Like I'll do that when I'm like playing games with my buddies. Like we're playing GTA or something and I sneak up on someone, I'll just go So I'm just like that one
crazy one.
A little bulb. It's so funny. I also love that the start of the film almost seems like a red herring.
Yes.
Like you think that those are the Waynes and that what you're seeing is like a young Bruce, and then
I know. I was like, so he's a ninja kid? I was kind of glad it wasn't Bruce, but like, you know, I like that they played that up. I was immediately thinking of Eddie McCabe.
It's just like, oh my god, are they about to kill the Waynes again? This poor man, he's gonna be so upset.
He's gonna lose it. He's gonna lose it if they kill the Waynes again. And I kind of liked that, of course, that reflection just kept going, you know, like that Batman stands there staring at him and Bruce keeps, you know, looking at him, and like you can like he sees himself in it, you know, like without having to do the Wayne's deaths,
without having to do the Wayne's, without having to do the Wayne death, without having to explain it like out loud, but also not fucking doing the MCU Spider-Man thing of just like moving away from that motivation to begin with. Like it's still there. It's still a through line throughout his entire character.
It's true. It's true. And I like that we're able to do that without having to overdo something we've seen a billion times. I was like, wow, Eddie's going to be so fucking happy. I was immediately like, yeah, he's going to love this. But pretty much I think the action's fantastic in this. I think the production design, the acting, the script, the whole pathos into Batman is fantastic. I really enjoyed this movie. I do like the ending in the stadium because, of course, I used to do rock shows in stadiums. I used to do the Against Arena stuff, so I really like that because I did think it was funny that they were all the terrorists were smart enough to hook themselves into the ceiling so that way they didn't fall and die, which of course is the actual safety thing you're supposed to do. But I thought it was really funny that all the terrorists were like, oh, we're gonna go shoot up a bunch of people, but of course if we fall, we would just smash, so let's hook in.
And I also love like the terror of it, the idea that even though I hesitate to say Nigma because they go by Nashton in this iteration, which some iterations of Riddler had, because sometimes they're just like, Nigma's too on the nose. They just call him Edward Nashton. Yeah. And that's what they go for this one. The fact that he's in Arkham, but yet all his followers have sort of like taken up the mantle to do these terrible things.
Right.
Like I saw people making fun of the joke, or not even a joke, just the note. They're just like, wow, this dude has like 500 followers, which immediately I've heard people like, that's only 5. That's not a lot. I'm like, yeah, it's not a lot in certain contexts. He's not a fucking YouTuber. He's a murderer.
Yeah, and it wasn't Twitter or something. It was like a locked site that you had to put in a password to see the video. So it was like it's like those are 500 people who were very into it, you know, like not like I've seen the joke, of course, but you're like, yeah, but this isn't just like
that's 500 people. That's a cult.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're like, oh, cats have higher numbers than that. You're like, my cat has higher numbers than that, but you know, they're not fucking listening to every word and doing whatever the cat says,
or uniting to like flood the fucking city.
Yeah, you're like, nah, this is different and obvious because it is scene where he's like talking to them on there. You can like hear the camaraderie he got from them or something, you know, like I do like that like the Riddler was misguided this whole time, that he like thought he was helping Batman in a way, you know, like in this.
But I like that they draw that parallel.
Yeah, that like Batman. It's like, Batman, are you just doing this? And you're like, He's like, oh shit. You can see his eyes there. He's like, am I doing this? Like he's like,
It's
oh,
a way
shit.
that we can do the "we're not so different" without having to actually fucking say "we're not so different" out loud.
Right, where they have the same objective, you know, like, and he's basically thought he was helping him the whole time. You're just like, damn.
Oh man,
I
that's
love
like
that. Love that.
Oh, that line is such a fucking pet peeve for me. It gets me so upset every time I hear it out loud. You and me, we're not so different. Like every time, even great movies that do it, it's just like, you just lost a point. You just lost a point.
Are you saying William Dafoe saying it in Spider-Man's not good? Because it's great. It's so good. You and me.
Every fucking time. I hate it so much.
But I love the direction of this movie. I think that this is a great starting point for a great trilogy. I'm so excited. I hope they just give Matt Reeves whatever the fuck he wants after this.
He has spoken about like the villains that he's like toyed with considering, and all of them just like, yes. He's like, he's considering doing Hush, which isn't surprising given that little Easter egg. He's considering doing Mr. Freeze, which I'm like, yes, come on.
Yes,
come on,
do a dark Mr. Freeze. Do it.
Because it would be a mistake to do Joker like right off the bat, because we talked about those Riddler and Joker parallels. Like it would feel too samey.
Yes, I agree.
If you wanted to do Joker right off the bat, I'm just like, oh god, I want Mr. Freeze so bad.
Give me Mr. Freeze. Give me a dark Mr. Freeze. That'd be great.
And again, this, even though this is still like trying to be like hyper realistic and grounded in noir, it's still again stylized enough that I could see them doing a version of Mr.
I
Freeze
could also see them doing for the next movie a Court of Owls. You know, like I could almost see it. You know,
he
like,
says he's considered that too, and like Pattinson really wants to do it. And even Paul Dano, you can see him in interviews, was super excited about it. It's just like, oh, you got to do Court of Owls, dude.
And I know Scott Snyder tweeted about it. He was like, it's trending for. He was like, Court of Owls is trending. What the fuck? Like, and you're like, yeah, boy.
Court of Owls would be great. You would have to sort of recontextualize them a little bit, because the entire thing about the Court of Owls is that it works for an older Batman story, because it's a Batman who like thinks he knows Gotham like the back of his hand,
right?
And the Court of Owls being introduced out of the shadows sort of recontextualizes everything he thought he knew about the history of the city,
which they kind of already did with this movie, where he like thought his dad was a good guy, and he thought all these different things about the city, and like and it was revealed not to be true.
So you could do the Court of Owls. You would just have to recontextualize them a little bit. Like Court of Owls, at least as far as like its original iteration is concerned, would work better for like a Batfleck story, because that's a Batman who's been at it for 20 years.
Yeah,
so they work as like something to like humble him.
Yeah, right. But I don't know if we're getting any more Batfleck. I think that's,
I
think that's
either.
over.
But I'm just saying in context, it works for an older Batman.
Yeah, true that.
But again, these are adaptations. You can find a way to recontextualize it.
Yeah. Now what do you, is there anything else you want to go over about this before we wrap this puppy up? Because I know we could probably go on forever, but I feel like
I can't think of like any glaring issues that I'm like, that I just straight up didn't like. And maybe I'll pick up on it with time, or like seeing it again tomorrow, but there's like nothing that I actively just did not like. It did not feel like 3 hours.
No, it did not.
And
I had such a good time.
Anyway,
I think that's the number one thing, is that I had such a good time. It was unbelievable how good of a time I had in the theaters there. And I just saw Spider-Man No Way Home, which was obviously a good time. This was so much more of a good time. I had such a good time. It was so fun.
I was almost kind of disappointed when I felt like we were wrapping up. It was like, no, I guess I can stay.
I can stay.
I got nothing to do. You give me another 3 hours. I'm good. I'm not going anywhere.
It's true. I'm excited to see it again. I already said my two real complaints is that I was like, Nirvana, and I think that one Penguin line,
which is not a complaint.
No,
really.
It's not a real complaint. It's just my personal like. It's like, I get what Matt Reeves is doing. I know what he's up to, and I like appreciate it. I just am not a Nirvana guy, so I'm just
you're telling me I should use that song for the Instagram story when the episode is up.
You should not.
I'm going to do that as opposed to something from the score.
But then basically, the other thing was, of course, the Penguin line. I thought that was the only line that I was like, really, guys? But other than that, I think that this is like This is a really fun movie. It's a great Batman movie. Is it better than The Dark Knight? Because, of course, that's going to come up. It's questionable because I think there's some iconography to The Dark Knight that's there. And
There's
I think that maybe
iconography,
in
and
time there'll be
there are
some iconography
ripples.
for the Batman.
There are ripples that The Dark Knight had on just comic book movies in general that are too soon to compare with this. We need to see like what this does.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's kind of too early to see if it's better than these movies, you know.
It's definitely top tier.
Yes, that's what I want to say.
Like, it is on the upper echelon.
You might, if we're even having that conversation, if it's better than The Dark Knight, this is fucking upper echelon of Batman movies. This is fucking the best, the cream of the crop, the fucking top shit. And it's able to do that with like a lot of ease, you know. I feel like now, guys, thank you for tuning in to our Batman review. Basically, it comes down to we already said it. Pre-order this bitch. Fucking watch it on HBO Max. Fucking go see it again.
Buy it if you're into physical media like we are.
Yeah. This is definitely a 9 for me for the year. This is like, you know, I usually we don't give number scores on here, but I do a number score on my own list, and it's a 9 on my list, and that's huge for me. You know, like that's fucking huge. I almost wanted to go a 10. I need to see it again. I need to see it again is basically it. I love this, and I have so much to talk to about it, but I need to see it again. It's one of those things where I'm like,
did you see it by yourself?
Yeah, I did. I was like, I'm just gonna. Mary was like 3 hours of Batman, and I was like, you're not going. I'm like, I'm going by myself.
Just like, okay, with that attitude, don't even bother coming.
That's exactly it. I was like, never mind. But I went for like a 2. The thing is, it's 3 hours long, so I went for like a 2 o'clock showing, and it was like, you know, you're walking out at 5, and you're just like, oh Jesus Christ.
Yeah, because like between the trailers and shit, and if you stick around and watch all the credits, which I should actually bring that up. There is no post-credit scene.
No post-credit scene.
But there is an Easter egg at the end because they tell you to go to the Ratalata website at the end that they were looking up, because there is sort of a viral thing on there that you can look up. It's a cipher that they're putting out there for people to solve.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
I'm sure will be some sort of like vague hint at like what they want to do for a sequel, because that is something cool. I miss viral marketing campaigns.
Yeah. And
like,
Matt
remember
Reeves
when The Dark Knight did that, and that was so fucking cool? Like, I miss stuff like that.
Matt Reeves is the king, you know? And
the internet is so much more prevalent now than it was in 2008 that I feel like we're not taking advantage of that anymore.
Yeah. And I do want to say there's one other reference that it's like I brought up, you know, a neo-noir that I don't think gets brought up enough on our show is Taxi Driver. And I think that this is very Taxi Driver in a lot of scenes, especially the scene where he walks up to Maroney at the funeral. I was so just like, he's about to shoot this man. He's about to Taxi Driver this man.
It also feels like its own thing as opposed to just sort of aping Taxi Driver like Joker does.
Right? You're just like, wait a minute. I mean, you know, like I say, Matt, I said earlier that sorry to cut off the Taxi Driver thing, but you get the reference. He's destructive. Matt Reeves is the king because, of course, he's the fucking Cloverfield. You know, like, he's behind Cloverfield, and that had the best fucking viral campaign ever. But if we're bringing up all these fucking references in accordance to, and many more behind us to this movie, that just shows the quality it is without it being messy, because it's doing all these references without being messy.
Yeah, and it wears its influences on its sleeves as far as like the source material that it's inspired by way more than any of the films have up until this point.
Yeah, I agree with that. So yeah, guys, thank you so much for listening to the Batman review. Please check out other episodes on galaxygeek.com. Check it out anywhere you get your podcasts, and you can see our beautiful faces on YouTube, the Galaxy Geek YouTube. And please, you know, make the algorithm work. Subscribe, like, whatever. Make the buttons. Make the buttons happen. And guys, of course, we're huge Batman fans, so there's lots of Batman content on I mean, everywhere. I got that Batman on the wall right there.
I got tiny little Batmans that you got me. You can see the yellow fucking Grant Morrison omnibus.
The big Batman you got me. And it's
Batmobile's right up there on top of the shelf.
So if you want to see pictures of that shit, we have personal accounts on our Twitter and Instagram. I'm Yep Frank on there.
Mod Karaka.
And I also have Yep Gundam, which is just all Gundams if you're into that shit. But guys, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to our the Batman review. I literally could have done 3 hours of this. I'm like kind of restraining ourselves because like we could have just kept going, and I don't want to be wrong. I want to see it again.
Yeah.
And so guys, if you want to keep talking the Batman with us, comment down below at us on any of those networks. Talk to us. We want to talk about Batman. Of course we do. So thank you guys for watching today's episode. Thank you for, supporting the show. And I hope you have a great rest of your week.
See you next time.